The term glaze has been a popular term over the last 2 years, but I don't think there's gonna be any glaze left in this world by the end of this video, because even though I have made a lot of videos crapping on the last few seasons of Game of Thrones, the more time I spend away from the show makes me realize how unbelievably peak Game of Thrones was. I watched a lot of shows after Game of Thrones, some of the highest rated shows of all time, and they're good, and I'll talk about them in a sec, but they're just not her. They're just not Game of Thrones. They're just not Tyrion Lannister, they're just not Ned Stark, they're just not Tywin or Jon, or the incredible dialogue and stakes. And recently House of the Dragon Season 2 came out, and it's getting its ass clapped by the reviews and critics. And sure, House of the Dragon Season 2 has its flaws, but I truly do believe if everyone wasn't subconsciously comparing it to Game of Thrones, and having Game of Thrones Season 2 level expectations, House of the Dragon Season 2 would be viewed a lot more positively. But Game of Thrones has so much meat to it, and a huge part of that meat that Game of Thrones put a little bit of spice on it, that no other show comes close to, is world building. A lot of other shows just suck at this. And I want to talk about this first because it's basically like unanimously agreed upon that Game of Thrones has the best world building of any TV show ever. Everything made so much sense. It made sense for Tyrion to take a very long time to go from the Wall to his dad Tywin. It made sense for Catelyn to take a while to get from King's Landing to the Vale. And the world truly just felt real. Whenever I watch Star Wars, I really have to do my own research and find out where a person is and how long it's gonna take for a person to get from place A to place B. But in Game of Thrones, the author George Martin does such a fantastic job at world building that I gotta just put him in that GOAT conversation of world building. His world building skills are so good that he even helped create the world of a video game called Elden Ring, which literally won Game of the Year in 2022. That's how insane it gets.
Basically, they wanted a world created to set the game in. They wanted world building as a big factor in fantasy and science fiction. You're not only talking about the characters and the plot, but the setting is almost as important as everything else. Tolkien's Middle-earth, Robert E. Howard's Hyborian Age, the Foundation universe of Isaac Asimov. I worked up fairly detailed background for them.
I've said before, and a lot of people think I'm talking crazy when I say this, but some of you will understand this when I say, Game of Thrones feels like an open world video game. If you don't play video games and you actually have a life and you're not a worthless nerdy loser like me, to give context, most of the video games are linear. You can't really explore too much. The game just kind of takes you where they want you to go. But an open world video game on the other hand, is like GTA, Red Dead or Assassin's Creed, where it feels like real life. You can go exploring wherever you want and do a lot of horsing around and perhaps even some tomfoolery. And that's what Game of Thrones feels like. Game of Thrones feels open world, which is crazy because it's a TV show. I can't just control the character and make them go another way and impact the story myself, but it sure feels like I can. While other shows like Peaky Blinders, it feels like a linear video game, and it feels like not much is actually happening in the world, which is crazy because Peaky Blinders literally takes place between World War I and World War II. But even other worlds like Attack on Titan, even Israel just doesn't compete with Westeros. And the reason why a lot of medias like Attack on Titan and Star Wars fail at this is because of the travel. Last time I checked, you can go light speed in Star Wars. You can essentially go from place A to place B from one scene to another. Which ironically is the thing that ruined the last 2 seasons of Game of Thrones. People just gained the ability to fast travel. And the world building doesn't just go for actual land or the travel. The world building takes in all things like dragons, the King's Guard, the Queen, the King, the many lords and ladies. All of that goes alongside the world building. You need all of those things. Without all of those, the world building would be like being lucky enough to be born with a penis, and not using it in your entire life and dying without feeling the pleasure that God intended. It's just unsatisfying. Again, it's something that a lot of shows just suck at doing. They suck at adding details. Details like Jaime being a Kingsguard and having to kill his own king adds so much to the world. Because that king just happened to be the father of Daenerys, who is the mother of dragons. And in season 1, Daenerys is thugging it out and trying to be better. But once she does, she can set those dragons loose on Jaime. That little bit of detail of Jaime killing the king, rather than some random knight killing the king, literally adds so much to the world. And speaking of which, the main and last thing that Game of Thrones did so perfectly with this is the lore. Robert's Rebellion sounds like a goddamn roller coaster that took you to hell and back. We keep hearing some of the craziest facts about Robert's Rebellion during the show. The way people talk about Robert's Rebellion is how I talk about Prime Fortnite. It was a scary place, but it made boys into men. And the way they connect the rebellion to the main story is amazing. The character Rhaegar Targaryen's death was the most impactful death during Robert's Rebellion. And the TV show just never fails to connect it to the main story. I mean, they literally connected to Daenerys right off the bat.
Daenerys Targaryen, has wed some Dothraki horse lord. What of it? Shall we send her a wedding gift?
Knife, perhaps a good sharp one, and a bold man to wield it.
She's little more than a child.
Oh. Soon enough that child will spread her legs and start breeding.
Tell me we're not speaking of this.
Oh, it's unspeakable to you? What her father did to your family, that was unspeakable. What Rhaegar Targaryen did to your sister, the woman I loved. I'll kill every Targaryen I get my hands on.
You can't get your hands on this one, can you?
And in general in the show, death actually matters. It always matters. Again, other shows do this well. Like Attack on Titan, the death of Erwin is good. There were consequences to his death, but it's nowhere near the level of Game of Thrones. I mean, the series literally starts with a death, which on a side note, the entire world owes this man an apology. This entire scene is like a German citizen going to America in World War II and telling the government, hey, they're gonna kill you over there. And then the American government kills him because he's an undocumented immigrant. But whatever, back on topic. Death actually matters in Game of Thrones. When King Robert passes away, literally changes everything. The Game of Thrones officially starts, it's underway. Everyone is loaded into the lobby, and it's time to motherfucking play. And our boy Ned Stark loses the Game of Thrones immediately. I've never seen a worse performance than this, man. Ned Stark dropped a worse performance in Game of Thrones than the Toronto Maple Leafs did in the playoffs. It was terrible. And Ned Stark lost his head because of it. And this just so happened to become one of the most iconic scenes in television history. Even the author of the book said it was his favorite scene of the show.
So what was your favorite and least favorite scene in HBO's Game of Thrones?
My favorite scene, well, this, of course, I suppose everybody's seen this series now. I don't have to worry about giving things away. But my favorite scene had to be the end of episode 9, the execution of Ned. I thought they did that very powerfully. It was, not precisely as described in the books, but it was certainly moving and evocative. The director did a great job on it. The scriptwriters did a great job. They added a wonderful grace note, which is when Ned is being led up to the stairs where he sees Arya and he says to Yoren of the Night's Watch as he passes him, he says, Baelor, to set in motion Yoren saving Arya, which is not in the books. In the books, Yoren just spots her on his own and takes his own initiative. But it was a great idea to give that little moment, that one last kind of heroic act by Ned. So I love that. I love what they did with that moment.
When the world needed Ned Stark the most, he said, nah, I'm out, fam. But his death was something that shocked me to my core. When I watched Ned Stark dying for the first time, it was like October, and I took my shirt off and I walked into the rain and yelled at the sky for 30 minutes asking why would you do that to such a great man. But a part of me knew it was perfect, and a part of me knew it had to happen. And it was a masterfully written scene. Ned Stark didn't stay a second on screen longer than he had to. He left as soon as the bus arrived, and he was out of there. But it just hits so hard. Again, shows like Attack on Titan, it does the same thing. It kills its protagonist in like the 6th episode. But those episodes are only like 20 minutes and he comes back to life right after. But in Game of Thrones, nah dog. The next episode, Ned Stark's head was literally on a spike. There's nowhere valid for you, Ned. And it's something that the author talks about too. You have to be very careful when you're reviving a character. He famously criticized Lord of the Rings for this many times.
If you could ask any question to Tolkien, what would that be?
Why did you bring Gandalf back from the dead? He should have stayed dead. That was one of the great moments when people talk about my characters dying, but I remember when I was 12, 13 years old and reading Fellowship of the Ring, and Gandalf goes down into that pit with the Balrog and, fly, you fools, and God, the power of that scene. And Gandalf was dead. He was like the daddy. He was the one who knew everything. He was the smart guy. Now the kids were on their own. And how were they going to fare? I mean, it was such a tremendous, gutsy, powerful thing to do. But then he brought him back.
Okay.
Had a different cloak on, white instead of gray. Okay. But I would have left him dead.
But the thing that Game of Thrones has that a lot of other shows don't is an insane character loophole. I mean, almost no main character in Game of Thrones is like any other character. But in other shows, a lot of them are the same. In Peaky Blinders, Luca Changretta is essentially the same as Sabini, but Luca just has an Italian accent and he also has my nose. But in Game of Thrones, everyone is different. Sure, Jaime and Jon can play with the sword, but Jaime is trying to get his ass out of the emo phase he is in at the age of 30. and Jon is essentially thugging it out at the wall, making sure humans can actually like live another decade. Arya and Sansa are sisters, but neither of them would be able to handle what the other one went through. If Arya and Sansa switched positions, they would both be dead. Arya would not be able to shut her mouth and try playing the Game of Thrones, like Sansa had to do. And Sansa probably wouldn't be able to hang with the poor white people of Westeros and live years of not knowing what she would eat. Stuff like that makes the story perfect. Daenerys has dragons, and that's enough said. And then there's my favorite character, Tyrion. Tyrion is our little comedian, and he is also the most human character in King's Landing playing the Game of Thrones. And he fails time and time again, but man, he does it entertainingly.
We've had vicious kings, and we've had idiot kings, but I don't know if we've ever been cursed with a vicious idiot.
You can't!
I can, I am!
They attacked me!
They threw a cow pie at you, so you decide to kill them all! They're starving, you fool! All because of a war you started!
You're talking to a king!
And now I've struck a king! Did my hand fall from my wrist?
And then you got the villains. Joffrey, Tywin, Ramsay, Cersei, and even the Night King are crazy motherfuckers. These people are again all different from each other. Villains like Joffrey and Tywin are totally different. Joffrey is a spoiled little brat with a lot of issues and the prince that was promised. Tywin on the other hand would be invited to Jeffrey Epstein's private island for free, and he will still give Epstein $1,000 because a Lannister always pays their debts. Ramsay, he's not a guy who can just be given therapy and that's it. This dude needs to be put down. But because he's so entertaining, I don't want him to be put down. I want to see more of him. And then you have Cersei, who, believe it or not, kinda got my sympathy in the books, but that's a topic for another video. But still, she is very complex, but also a villain. Like, I'm not gonna say I absolutely didn't love this scene right here.
I took you for a king.
Hold your tongue.
He's attacked one of my brothers and abducted the other. I should wear the armor, and you the gown. I shall wear this like a badge of honor.
Wear it in silence, or I'll honor you again.
But she has far more depth than just like being an evil witch. She's been through hell and it makes her life so interesting to hear about. And these things really make the characters real. And it's kind of what's ignored in the last like 2 to 4 seasons. And that's what kind of killed the show. Season 5 is decent despite its many flaws. Season 5 still has some like major jaw-dropping moments. Season 6 again, as much as I have criticized it, it has some of the craziest highs I've ever seen on TV, with Hold the Door, Battle of the Bastards, and The Winds of Winter. Like sure, those last two do have a lot of flaws. Like Cersei's wildfire should have technically blown up the rest of King's Landing with the chain reaction, but you know, fuck it, we ball. But as much as I criticize Season 5 and 6, I would much rather watch Game of Thrones Season 5 and Season 6 than any season of The Walking Dead. As much as I wish they stayed following the books, I still do love Jon, Ramsay, and Cersei in Season 6. It may all be fanfiction, but these are some of my favorite characters of a pretty decent script this season. And I would much rather watch Season 5 and Season 6 than almost any Star Wars show. And like I said, The Walking Dead, and maybe even Season 2 of House of the Dragon. But I might be a bit biased because House of the Dragon Season 2 only ended like a month ago. But still, some of my favorite moments in the series happened in Season 6 and it will always give me chills. And guess what? Y'all might hate me for this, but I've said many times before, Season 7 of Game of Thrones is a train wreck season. And it is. Season 7 is trash compared to the first 4 to 6 seasons. But I'm gonna be honest, I would rather watch Season 7 of Game of Thrones than any season of The Walking Dead and in most Star Wars shows. If you pretend Season 7 is just a fan project that someone else made, which is an actual fact by the way, then I'm totally down to watch it. And it's not just me. Season 7 is rated insanely high. Again, I don't agree with it. I don't think Season 7 of Game of Thrones is like anywhere near like a 8 out of 10. I'll probably give it a maximum a 7 out of 10. And I'm talking about a hard maximum, not like a soft maximum like the Drake penis leak. But the cinematography and the music and the characters interacting in Season 7 is pretty good. And even in Season 8. Season 8 is an entirely different story. I will never defend Season 8. But the music in Season 8 as well as the visuals, but nothing more, are fantastic. Or at least most of the time when you actually can see what's happening on the screen.
The battle's tonight, right? I wasn't being pranked?
The White Walkers are approaching! Battle stations!
Prepare for the most epic battle of all time that nobody will see because it's too dark, and we'll say it's because they have bad TVs.
And it's really sad to see what happened to the show. I mean, instead of having 4 amazing seasons and 2 good seasons and 2 trash seasons, we could have had 13 amazing seasons like the author wanted, and he was planning. But nah.
Why is it ending?
I don't know. Ask David and Dan when they come through. We could have gone to 11, 12, 13 seasons, but I guess they wanted a life.
So you wanted it to keep going.
Well, if you've read my novels, you know there was enough material for more seasons. They made certain cuts, but that's fine. We have 5 other shows, 5 prequels in development.
Now, did you know Game of Thrones would be ending with this season, or did they call you and say, hey, let's have a chat?
David and Dan have been saying for, like 5 years that 7 seasons was all they would go. And we got them to go to 8, but not any more than that. So, I had to custom that. There was a period like 5 years ago where they were saying 7 seasons and I was saying 10 seasons. And, they won. They're the ones actually working on it. So.
But despite its flaws, I have a painful time watching other TV shows. The only other show that I watched after Game of Thrones that really captivated me was The Boys. And I think it's because The Boys is actually kind of similar to Game of Thrones in the sense where Game of Thrones is like an ultra realistic story of fantasy, and The Boys is kind of like an ultra realistic story of superheroes. But I still wouldn't say The Boys comes anywhere near close to the first 4 seasons of Game of Thrones. But no show does, at least the ones I've watched. I do still have to watch shows like Breaking Bad and The Sopranos, so I really hope that they're the shows that really give me that heroin kick I've been looking for, that Game of Thrones last gave me. But yeah, leave some recommendations in the comment section and I might watch your show and make a video on it. But yeah, that's it for this video. Like, subscribe, and peace.